Hi there, this is Eric from Exterpy, and we're back with another episode of our Starklings Side-Quest series. This is episode 2, and we'll be covering primitive types. If you haven't seen our first episode, Variables in Cairo, I highly recommend you check that out first before moving on to this one. As an overview, we'll be looking at the basic types that are implemented into the Cairo compiler, such as Boolean types, integer types, tuples, strings, and felt 252s. We'll be walking through these exercises in detail, so by the time we're done, you'll have a solid understanding of what these basic types can do and get a stronger foundation to move on to more advanced topics. Okay, so let's get our Starklings up and running. Make sure that you're in the Starklings Cairo folder, and we'll go ahead and run the command, which is cargo run dash r dash dash bin Starklings watch. We'll go ahead and run that. And this will load up to the latest exercise that is not completed. And if you're following along, it should be the primitive types 1.cairo. So let's go ahead and find that here in our folders, primitive types. And first, let's go to the README. So Cairo has a couple of basic types that are directly implemented into the compiler. In this section, we'll go through the most important ones. And then, of course, there's a link to the Cairo language book. And again, please read through that. So let's look at the first exercise here. And let's see if we have any instructions. So it says, fill in the rest of the line that has code missing. No hints, no tricks, just get used to typing these. All right, so let's take a look at this function. And it says, let is morning equal true. And then it goes into a condition, if is morning, print good morning. And then we have let, and then a comment, which says finish the rest of the line, like the example, or make it be false. And then the rest of the code, if is evening, print good evening. Okay, so let's take a look at our errors here. And it's pretty clear. It says error, missing token, terminal underscore, and it pretty much lets you know where you're missing. And obviously we know that that's where it's missing, but just to get familiar with what the output of the compiler is. So yeah, let's go ahead and finish this, and let's do is evening, and then let's have it equal false. And let's save that and see if we can compile. Yeah, so that's compiling, and it says good morning. So what would happen if we put true? So we can see that it says good morning and good evening. So feel free to play around with this. It's pretty straightforward, and it shows you a basic implementation on using Booleans. Okay, so let's take a look at our second exercise here, primitive types 2. And we see here that we have, let's minimize this. And we see here that we have some instructions. Let's make the most of the screen space here. So we see here that we have in the main function some comments with some instructions. A short string is a string whose length is at most 31 characters and therefore can fit into a single field element. Short strings are actually felts. They are not a real string. Note the single quotes that are used with short strings. So we see here, this is a short string, and they're using the single quote with the C character. So we see here that they're assigning my first initial to the C character. And there's a conditional statement that goes through whether it's alphabetical or numerical or something else. So here we see the let keyword and nothing else with some comments here as instructions that say, finish this line like the example. What's your favorite short string? Try a letter, try a number, try a special character, try a short string. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. And we see here that they're using the your character variable. They're referencing it. So that should be the variable name that we should use. So let your character, and then we'll assign that a value of an E character. And let's see if that works. So we can see here we have an updated error list, and it tells you very clearly that the reference argument must be a mutable variable. So that makes sense. We go ahead and add the mutable keyword because, again, we always know that variables in Cairo are immutable by default. So adding the mute keyword there, make sure that we compile correctly, and we're looking good. So that was pretty simple, and it shows us here that our character is alphabetical. So let's try a number this time. And it tells us here alphabetical or numerical. Let's try something else. And with the exclamation point, it tells us that it's neither alphabetic nor numeric. Right, I hope that all makes sense. And with that, we can go ahead and move on to the next one. Let's take a look at primitive types 3. So here we see it tells us to destructure the cat tuple to call print on each member. So we always have a hint, but I haven't been using these, and obviously feel free to use those as you're doing it on your own. But let's look at the code here. So we see let cat, and it's assigned to a tuple, which is a string, Furry McPherson, and the value 3. Okay. And then we see the next line that says let, and then there's a comment of your pattern here and assigned to cat. And then we see the two print statements. Let's take a look at the errors and see if there's anything interesting there. Not really. It's just telling us that we don't have identifiers are not found. And there's a missing token here, which I guess is to be expected because we haven't defined our tuple, or we haven't destructured our tuple. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's very similar to what you do in assigning a tuple, but kind of in reverse. So instead of having your cat assigned to the tuple, you create a tuple here, which is name and age, and then assign it to cat. And let's see if that works. And that's it. So that's a simple way, an easy example of how to destructure a tuple in Cairo. Easy enough. Let's move on to the next one. So modify the integer types to make the tests pass. Learn how to convert between integer types and felts. Okay, we see that they're importing some traits and options. Here's our function here that sums a couple of U8s, X and Y. Then we have an instruction here, modify the types of this function to prevent an overflow when summing big values. Okay, let's continue to take a look at the exercise just to make sure we understand everything that we need to do. And then we need to convert to felt, okay, and return X as a felt 252. And then here, this one is convert to U8. So return as a U8, okay. And then we have some tests. And so then we also have to modify this test to use the correct integer types. Don't modify the values, just the types. See how using the underscore U8 suffix on the numbers lets us specify the type. Try to do the same thing with other integer types. Okay. And here is the rest of the test. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's work on this first one. And we see that the instructions tell us to modify the types to prevent an overflow when summing bigger values. So this was just a regular sum of U8s, as we see here. And in this case, we want to make sure that we have enough space. So the easy solution there would be to make these U16s. And by making X and Y a U16, and then also returning a U16, that should hopefully take care of the problem. Let's move on to the next one. So here we have the instruction to return X as a felt 252. And we have, if we look at the imports, we have the into and try into traits being imported. And so those are traits or methods that we can call to convert from one type to the other. So in this case, since we're converting X into a felt 252, which is a larger data type, we can actually literally use X and then the into method to convert it into the felt 252 that we want here to be returned. And then we have one more here. In a similar way, we see that we want to convert a felt 252 into a U8. So the difference here is that we have to kind of try to see if this works. So we have to use the try into method. And then because it is a method that could fail, we have to use the unwrap. So when we unwrap this, we should, the code will panic if it doesn't work. And so we'll know that there's something wrong. Okay, so let's move on here to the test that we have to fix. And again, we're told not to modify the values, just the types. So it's pretty simple. We just do what we did before and modify this to be U16s instead of the U8s they were before. So let's go ahead and save this and see if it all worked out and see if our tests are passing. Yes, it looks like we were able to complete this exercise completely. And again, if you want to go more in depth, please use the link in the README to read more about the types, but this should give you a basic overview on how to use primitive types in Cairo. Okay, so thank you once again for watching this video. This is the end of this particular one. We'll be back with more with the next exercises in the Starklings Side-Quest. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon.